back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, October 3rd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the Super Chat button in the chat. This will help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment that you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to talk about the game tonight between the Buccaneers and the Falcons, a big NFC South matchup to kick off Week 5. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk more about Davante Adams and the trade rumors. We'll talk about some of the possible destinations for him and how he would fit on those teams. So we'll get into that. Then in the third through fifth parts of the show, we'll go through the remaining games that I didn't get to talk about. We'll talk about the Browns-Raiders game, how that went down. We'll talk about the Jaguars falling to 0-4, losing to the Texans. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Bears and the Rams game, Bears winning that. So let's get into the first topic, which is previewing tonight's game between the Buccaneers and the Falcons. So last year, these two teams split the season series. They both road teams won. The Falcons won in Tampa, and the Buccaneers later in the year they won in Atlanta. And of course, that made a big difference because the Buccaneers of course ended up winning the division last year. And the first time these two teams met last year, it was a low-scoring game, and Younghoe Koo kicked the game-winning field goal, I believe. And then last year was high-scoring. Baker Mayfield threw a go-ahead touchdown, I believe, to Cade Otton. But it's different now. You got Kirk Cousins as the starting quarterback. And, they're 2-2. Buccaneers are 3-1, and their offense is clicking right now. So, yeah, this is a big game early on. If the Falcons can win this, these two teams would be tied for the division lead. So, yeah, there's there's some, I don't want to say there's a lot on the line tonight because, it's only Week 5. But, whoever wins this game, that could go a long way when it comes to winning the division. So, yeah, Buccaneers, they're coming off of a win against the Eagles, a dominating performance against the Eagles, I'll add, 33-16. And then for the Falcons, they didn't score an offensive touchdown against the Saints, but they still got the win. Younghoe Koo did kick a game-winning field goal in that game. And, yeah, they got a touchdown on special teams. They got a defensive touchdown. And, yeah, Younghoe Koo kicked a bunch of field goals. He went, I wanted to double-check really quick. So he went 4 for 4 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points. And, yeah, he made a 58-yarder to win the game against the Saints. And the Saints have now dropped 2 in a row after getting off to a 2-0 start. And, yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. And, Kirk Cousins hasn't been great so far, missing a couple of offensive linemen. You got a backup center now, a backup right tackle. The right tackle is actually not playing bad. But, there's been some concerns with the backup center. There's been a couple of offensive penalties on him. I believe pre-snap. So, they're trying to get on the same page, of course, with Kirk Cousins. But That's kind of one concern. And, to go through the rankings of these two teams. So the Bucs, they average 246 passing yards per game, which is 6th in the NFL. Falcons are 17th, averaging 216 rushing yards per game. Both teams have not run the ball great. And with the Falcons, you would have expected that to be you wouldn't have expected that because with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, you would think they'd be closer to the top 10. But no, they're 22nd. They're averaging 102.8 rushing yards per game, and the Bucs are averaging 25th or averaging 96 rushing yards per game, which is 25th. And then points per game, the Bucs are 11th, and the Falcons are 22nd. And then defense, Falcons' defense against the pass has been pretty good. 12th, giving up an average of 198.8 passing yards per game. Buccaneers' defense is 19th, giving up an average of 220.5 passing yards per game. Rushing yards, both teams. The Bucs are 22nd, and the Falcons' defense is 25th. So maybe one of these running games will perform well tonight. I would lean more towards saying the Falcons. Not to say that, I don't like Bucky Irving. I think looks like he's going to be a good player. And Rashad White, is more of that, receiving back. But, I would lean more towards the Falcons running game doing good tonight. But then you could say, well, they're missing a couple of starters on the offensive line, which hurts. And, the Bucs defense was wrecking havoc last week against the Eagles. So that could be the case in this game. And then in terms of points allowed, both defenses, are in the top 15. Falcons defense is 14th, giving up an average of 21.3 points per game. And the Buccaneers are giving up an average of 19.5 points per game, which is 9th. So, and Baker Mayfield, he's gotten off to a great start. 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. After tonight, he will have over 1,000 passing yards. Kirk Cousins, could be the same thing. Right now he's at 864 passing yards. So, both quarterbacks, Baker definitely. Kirk Cousins, who knows? He hasn't been, like I said, he hasn't been great so far. And he's trying to get off to a good start tonight. You get a win here. The good thing is they did get the win against the Saints. So that at least, helps. And that's, again, this is a big game for both teams, like I said. So I think we were experiencing some connection issues. So if, at least for the live stream people, so I apologize for that. But we are back, hopefully. Just let me know in the chat to double check. But I'm pretty sure we're good. Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi might have disconnected, which is odd. That usually doesn't happen during the show, but it is what it is. So anyways, yeah, I keep saying it. It's a big game. And, I expect both quarterbacks to make plays tonight. For the Falcons, okay. Christy Lewis in the chat who said rise up before. He said it's going in and out, but it's not out long. Okay. I think we should be good for now. That usually doesn't happen. Doesn't usually disconnect during the live show, but I guess it just happened here. But anyways, I'm expecting both quarterbacks to make plays tonight. For the Falcons, I'd like to see them open up this passing game. I think that's what most people are really clamoring for is, get the ball to your playmakers. Get it to Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts. Have these guys make plays. People keep complaining about Kyle Pitts. They thought with Kirk Cousins now in the fold that, he was going to get it going finally, and that really hasn't been the case. They want to see him go off. His peak right now was his rookie season when he had 1,000 yards. But I think part of the problem, it's definitely a couple of things. You got the offensive line banged up, which is not great because Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles. And the Falcons' offensive line, when it was healthy, especially in that Eagles game, it did a good job. When that second half changed for the Falcons, when they came back against the Eagles, and now with Kirk Cousins not having good protection against some of these defensive lines, like going up against the Saints defense has been good this year. You saw what happened in week 1 against the Steelers with the healthy offensive line. And then, now you got the Bucs. Look what they did to the Eagles with their guys back. Vita Vea coming back. He was wrecking havoc. He's going to wreck havoc tonight, you would imagine. So, Yeah, that's going to be a problem. But, try to get the offense going, get the running game going as well. They got 2 quality backs. And the defense, I think, for the Falcons has been solid. Getting Judon, getting Justin Simmons to pair with Jesse Bates. This defense is pretty good. The Bucs, and they've been doing it without some of their key guys. Antoine Winfield Jr. has been out, but they've still been able to piece it together. So I expect this to be a very competitive game. I'm leaning towards the Buccaneers, though, just because I think right now they're playing better on both sides. And, again, I really like how Baker Mayfield's playing. So, and again, wouldn't surprise me if the Falcons win. They're at home, but I do think it'll be a close game. I'm going to say final score is 24-20. I'm going to say that's going to be the final score. But, for the Falcons, I'm really curious to see how their offense comes out tonight. If they can really get it going. And it's not like in their losses, they got blown out or anything. They've lost close games. They just need this offense to get it going. And this is going to be a good team. I mean, it is a good team. But once Kirk Cousins is fully back, because, still trying to get his feet wet. Once he gets back to, close to 100%, and hopefully the offensive line can manage to protect him until they get their starters back, this offense is going to, you would think, is going to click at some point. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, 24-20, I got the Buccaneers winning. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you have winning this matchup? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break. When we come back, we will talk about Davante Adams. We'll talk about some of the destinations that he can end up on if he ends up getting traded from the Raiders. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to get into talking about Davante Adams once again and just kind of talk about, the possible teams that he can end up on if the Raiders trade him. I mean, it's inevitable, I think, but let's kind of just go through it. So these are some of the teams that it seems like they have some connection to Davante. Now, it doesn't mean that, ultimately he's going to end up on one team. But these are some of the teams that he could end up on. Now, I could tell you there are teams here that I would knock off immediately. Like the Chiefs, I think have... The Chiefs and the Ravens, no, I shouldn't say the Ravens. But the Chiefs, I think they probably are least likely to get him just because within the division. Now, if they offer the Raiders a package that they can't refuse, then that's different. But for me, I feel like it's hard for me to see the Raiders trading him within the division. Now, with some of these other teams here. Now, well, actually, let's go back to the Chiefs. If he does go to the Chiefs, I mean, this helps them tremendously because of what's happened to them the last, 4 weeks. Marquise Brown ruled out for at least the entire regular season. Then you have Rashee Rice getting hurt against the Chargers this past week. They're thin right now. They need all the help they can get. And if they got Davante Adams, I mean, to pair him up with Patrick Mahomes, that would be really special. But I don't think that's going to happen. Now, with some of the other teams here, the Commanders is an interesting one. Because you look at what the Commanders have been able to do so far this year. Right now, they are 3-1. And their offense these last couple weeks, now you could say they've gone up against bad defenses, but offense looks really good right now with Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is playing not just at an offensive rookie of the year level, but an MVP level. So you bring Davante Adams in here and pair him up with Terry McLaurin. I mean, that would really elevate this offense to new heights. And right now, they look like the best team in the division. And, I mean, I did say before the year, I didn't give them that many wins. And I was like, I feel like this one could come back to bite me, and it definitely is. But you know what? It's a credit to Jayden Daniels. And the reason why I had them so low in terms of win total is because of their defense, and I just wasn't a fan of the Dan Quinn hire. And it's a rookie, and Jayden Daniels is a rookie. But, right now he's kind of, doing what RG3 did in his rookie year, shocking people. I mean, remember when RG3, his first game, went on the road and beat the Saints in New Orleans? I mean, who would have predicted that? Not that many people. So, but getting Davante Adams, that would really help out this offense. And, that would only accelerate the growth of Jayden Daniels. So, and then, some of the other teams here, the Steelers do need another wide receiver. Now, it might not necessarily be Davante Adams. They might go out and try to get somebody else. I know as a Giant fan, there's some rumors that maybe Darius Slayton or Jalen Hyatt could be traded. So, maybe one of those guys ends up getting traded to one of these teams. It seems like the three teams that were kind of ahead of the pack, or at least I think it was on one of Schefter's recent tweets, was the Bills, the Steelers, and the Jets. Now, when it comes to the Steelers, like I said, they do need another wide receiver. Davante Adams will help tremendously. Look at how Justin Fields played this past week. Now, the Colts' defense is not great, but, you bring in Davante Adams to pair with George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, that running game gets going. I mean, and Fields, I think throwing the football, he's been impressive. I mean, some of the throws he made in the Colts game, watching some of the highlights, it was pretty good. And maybe the Steelers did find their guy. As long as he keeps playing like that, they might have their guy. He definitely looks like a different quarterback compared to how it was in Chicago. So we'll see what happens. I think that I don't know if the Steelers are going to get him, but I think they'll probably end up getting maybe another receiver elsewhere, possibly. But we'll see. They got a big Sunday night game with the Cowboys, so we'll see how that goes. The Ravens, I said that was a team that maybe could use him. I mean, you look at their receivers. I mean, with the Steelers, you got George Pickens. I mean, the Ravens got Zay Flowers, but, they paid Rashad Bateman. They also got Nelson Aguilar. I would like to see them add another receiver. I feel like that is the missing piece with the Ravens right now, is at least another receiver. Because, running the football, they're okay. With Derrick Henry, with Justice Hill. They still don't have Keaton Mitchell, and it's going to take some time before he comes back. because I saw an update with him. Still going to be a little bit, but you get him back, and you got a 3-headed monster coming out of the... Well, technically a 4-headed monster with Lamar Jackson whenever he runs the football, too. But they need another pass catcher. And Davante Adams on this Ravens team with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, well, that would be a 3-headed monster right there. And then if they can get Mark Andrews going. But, yeah, maybe because of money concerns, I think that might be the reason why the Ravens don't end up getting him. I don't know. We'll have to see. The Bills... I mean, the Bills right now, they don't have a number one wide receiver. I mean, Josh Allen's kind of spreading the ball around, and I don't think having Davante Adams really would have made a difference in that game on Sunday against the Ravens. You know, it's one of those games that you kind of just, you deal with. It happens. I still think the Bills, they could do okay without a number one wide receiver, a true number one wide receiver, because they have Josh Allen, and Josh Allen was playing really well up until that point. I mean, now let's see what happens when they take on the Texans this week, when they go up against their former number one wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. But, yeah, that was... Look, that shows you that the Ravens are very good. And, you know, you got to give them credit for that win. The Bills, they're going to bounce back. But that would be a good spot for him. You know, him and Josh Allen working together, that would be great. But I don't think that's going to happen. So then you got Dallas. Dallas would be interesting because really outside of CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks is hurt, and they really don't have a number 3 wide receiver either. You got Jacob Ferguson, who's a good tight end, but also Dallas really can't run the ball. Dallas, yeah, you know, Dallas is a weaker team this year. They don't really have a threat outside of CeeDee Lamb. And you take CeeDee Lamb out of the game, well, who's going to beat you? You know, the Giants, they had an opportunity to win that game last week, but that touchdown to CeeDee Lamb really made all the difference. So, and now Dallas is going up against the Steelers. Again, that's a big Sunday night game. Looking forward to it. But, I mean, that would be a good fit because you'd have CeeDee Lamb and Davante Adams. Those are 2 top 5 receivers on the same team. Now, I don't know if they'd be able to, again, like the Ravens, I don't know if they'd be able to afford him. But, I mean, it'd be a good fit. Helps his passing game. And also, the Cowboys still have not elevated Dalvin Cook. And again, you could say you're being way too optimistic on Dalvin Cook, but I definitely think he could be better than what they have right now in this running game. I mean, when are you going to elevate him? They signed him, and he's still on the practice squad. They say he looks good, but you're telling me he wouldn't be better than Zeke right now? I don't know. And then the final 2 teams, you got the Saints and the Jets. And the reason I left them out until here is because Davante Adams has a desire to play with the quarterback that he's already played with. You got Derek Carr with the Saints, Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. Now, it seems like the Jets, they're all in on getting Davante Adams. So I think that's ultimately where he'll end up. And that would help out the Jets tremendously because, you know, Rodgers is still trying to get on the same page with Garrett Wilson. Now, you could say an argument can be made, well, you bring in Davante Adams, you have Allen Lazard. Well, is Garrett Wilson now your wide receiver 3? I mean, you're trying to get on the same page with him. Now you bring in a receiver that you have a rapport with, along with the receiver that you already have a rapport with in Allen Lazard. Now what happens with Garrett Wilson? I mean, I think this helps out Garrett Wilson because then everybody's attention is going to be on Davante Adams, and then Garrett Wilson is, you know, going to be matched up in single coverage, and you take advantage of that. But they got to get on the same page. I mean, that play, I think it was the second to last drive of the game against the Broncos. You know, Garrett Wilson doesn't turn around for the ball. He catches that in stride. You know, Jets probably win the game by 2 points. But, well, then again, you know, Zerline's got to make the field goal. He missed, you know, the 50-yarder at the end. But I would love to see Davante Adams, go to the Jets just because, again, I would like to see Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams play together at least one more time. But that's just me. If he goes to the Saints, it would be interesting again, I think he'd play well because him and Derek Carr did work well together, even though Derek Carr wasn't great in the one and only year that him and Davante Adams were teammates in the NFL. But Davante had a really good year in 2022. And it would be interesting what the Saints would give up. Like, would they trade? I mean, I don't think would they trade Olave? I don't think so. I think maybe they would trade Rashid Shaheed. I don't know. But that would definitely help out the passing game. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Jets and the Saints right now are both 2-2. I mean, with the Saints, I mean, they probably, because they're in the NFC, they have an easier path, I would say, to make a run. Because the Jets, I mean, the AFC is just, it's tough. I mean, maybe it's not as tough as people would initially have thought, including myself, because you look at some of these teams, a lot of them are beatable. Really, all of them are beatable. So, including the Jets. So, let me know what you guys think, though. Who do you think has the best chance of landing Davante Adams? I think right now you got to say it's the Jets. I mean, that's who he's been linked to, for a while now. So we'll see what happens, but he's going to get traded at some point. And it's unfortunate because the Raiders right now, they are 2-2, but are they really going to do anything? Probably not. Minshew hasn't played great, even though, again, they're 2-2. But we'll have to wait and see. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the super chat button in the chat. Click on that. Create a super chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will finish up the remaining Week 4 matchups that we didn't get to. We'll start off with the Browns and the Raiders game, so we'll continue our Raiders talk. We'll talk about that, as well as Nick Chubb returning to practice. So we'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we will now get into talking about the Raiders-Browns game, as well as talking about Nick Chubb returning to practice. So, yeah, this was another rough one for the Browns. And again, I fell into the trap, I guess, because when I saw that Max Crosby and Davante Adams were ruled out for this game, I switched my pick from the Raiders to the Browns. And now, it actually did get off to a good start because the Browns were up 10-0. So I was like, okay, this looks like this is going to end up working out. But that was not the case, because then the Browns, they did score a touchdown, but it was a defensive touchdown. So let's kind of go through it. So the Browns, they went 15 plays, 70 yards, over 9 minutes of time of possession down the field. An impressive drive. And Watson connected with Whitehurt for a 1-yard touchdown. And that made it 7-0. Raiders punted. Then the Browns put together another drive. Dustin Hopkins kicked a 56-yard field goal. So it was 10-0. So I was feeling good. I'm like, okay. But then the Raiders, they put together an 11-play, 70-yard drive, almost 6 minutes of time possession. And Trey Tucker, from 3 yards out, scores a touchdown to make it 10-7. Browns punted. Raiders then responded with a 52-yard field goal by Daniel Carlson. So that made it 10-10. And that was the score at the half. Then the Raiders, they opened up with a field goal drive. And Carlson kicked a 34-yard field goal to make it 13-10. And then Deshaun Watson threw a pick on the next drive. He hit Amari Cooper, but I don't know what happened on that play, but it just got batted up in the air. I don't know what happened with Amari Cooper on that play, but somehow the ball just ended up in the air, and it ricocheted off of Amari Cooper and into the air, and the Raiders picked it off, and they turned that into a touchdown. Turner from 18 yards out scored. I don't know how. I watched the replay on that, or the highlight of that, and I don't know how the Browns didn't tackle him before he got to the end zone. But it was 20-10. Browns punted, but then the Raiders fumbled. Zamir White fumbled, and it was picked up by Rodney McLeod, and he scored from 25 yards out. So that made it 20-16, and then Dustin Hopkins missed the extra point. Then a lot of punts. A lot of punts in the fourth quarter. And then the Browns were driving. They got down to the Raiders 9, 4th and 3. Deshaun Watson is sacked. And that's how the game ends. For the Raiders, something that they were struggling to do so far this year was running the football. They ran the ball for 152 yards. Alexander Madison had 60 yards on the ground. Zamir White had 50 yards on the ground. DJ Turner had an 18-yard run for a touchdown. That was what I just brought. I brought up before. Brock Bowers even had a run in this game for 12 yards. And they had 2 rushing touchdowns, like I said. Jacoby Myers was their leading receiver, was targeted 10 times, 5 receptions for 49 yards. Trey Tucker, 5 for 41. Harrison Bryant, 2 for 21. Brock Bowers, 2 for 19. Like I said, Zamir White had a fumble. Raiders had 3 sacks in this game despite missing Max Crosby. And then for the Browns, again, another lackluster performance by their offense, and more specifically Deshaun Watson. 24 of 32 for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Yeah, just still wasn't good. Still wasn't that good. Jerome Ford had 10 carries for 58 yards. Watson had 8 for 32. Their leading receiver was Jerry Jeudy. He had 6 for 72. Amari Cooper had 4 for 35. And he would have had a lot more. Also, the Browns' defense had 2 sacks. I forget which drive it was. Was it the... No, it wasn't the second to last. It was in the fourth quarter. Yeah, here it is. So it was 1st and 10 from the Cleveland 18-yard line. There was about, a little over 10 minutes left in the game. And Watson connects with Amari Cooper, who was wide open for an 82-yard touchdown. Browns probably end up winning the game. Or at least, they're up by 3. Raiders maybe kick a field goal, whatever the case is. But gets called back for holding. That was a killer. That was a killer penalty in this game. So Amari Cooper, he would have went from having only 35 receiving yards to over 100 and a touchdown. And that would have been a huge... If that ended up panning out and the Browns ended up winning, that would have been such at least a huge boost for this team, or some sort of a boost going forward. But that just shows you the kind of season that the Browns are having right now. And you look at Deshaun Watson and his stats so far, 4 touchdowns to 3 picks. He hasn't been great. And, this season is continuing to slowly slip away from this team. You got the Commanders coming up on your schedule. You got the Eagles after that, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chargers, the Saints, the Steelers twice, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Dolphins, hopefully with Tua back, the Ravens. You got the Broncos in there as well, and their defense is playing well. Again, this is a team last year that went 11-6 with 5 different starting quarterbacks. You got to do something. And I think ultimately, maybe you got to sit Deshaun Watson down. I keep saying it, but he's not playing great. Now, I don't want to say this loss is all on him, because I feel like you could point to some of the other games, and like the Cowboys game, he was awful. Well, really, the Browns collectively were awful. And you probably put more of the blame on him, but, I mean, they got an 82-yard touchdown with Amari Cooper, and it gets called back for a holding penalty. You know, they miss an extra point. But, you know, in between them being up 10-0 to that defensive touchdown that got them back within a score, the offense didn't do anything. But the Browns are missing guys. They're missing guys on the offensive line. They're also missing Nick Chubb, who could be coming back soon. We'll get into that in a second. But with Deshaun Watson, I really don't expect them to do much. I didn't have them making the playoffs. I mean, I had them, winning 9-10 games, but right now you're 1-3. So they got to figure something out quick, because this season is going to continue to unravel. But now let's talk about some good news. So Nick Chubb returned to practice, and the Browns have opened up that 3-week window for him to return. And if they end up not activating him, then he's going to be out for, I believe, the rest of the year, which is not going to happen. He is going to play within the next 3 weeks. Now, it seems like the Browns are going to hold off for as long as possible until they feel like he's ready, and they will activate him. So that 3-week window probably going to end up being activated on that 3rd week. And Nick Chubb could definitely make a big difference in this offense. It's just he's coming off of a significant knee injury, and the Browns are going to want to ease him back into it. And they haven't been running the football great with Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman. Now they're also getting Nyheim Hines back too, and he's a change of pace back. That receiving back. So they're getting some reinforcements coming out of the backfield. Again, the offensive line, you hope, can get healthy. And then maybe this offense looks a little better. But I just think ultimately what is going to hold this team back is the quarterback position. But it's great news that Nick Chubb is, getting close to a return. And it's going to take some time. I mean, look, he might not be great this year. They really might ease him back into it. And, maybe like much later in the year, that's when, he gets it going and they give him maybe a little bit more of a workload. Early on, maybe he just, he's going to play, but, it's mostly going to be Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman, I guess, taking away, most of the workload from him. Because, again, you want to ease him back into it. That was a gruesome knee injury. And it's not the first time that Nick Chubb has gone through something like this. But you just hope he rebounds from it. But the fact that he's back at practice, it's very encouraging. And I think they were saying he's kind of ahead of schedule. So maybe he's back earlier than that 3rd week. We'll see. But no, it's really, really encouraging just to see Nick Chubb back. But the Browns need all the help they can get right now, because this season, like I said, is quickly unraveling. And again, they let Joe Flacco walk. I mean, look, how would Joe Flacco have been over the course of a full season? Probably would not be great. But at least to be the backup, I think the Browns kind of made a mistake letting him walk. Because look what he did with the Colts. Their young star quarterback gets hurt. He comes in. Colts win the game. Didn't miss a beat. Why couldn't the Browns keep him? And again, it could be, and I said it, and I heard this from somewhere, and it's true, that they didn't want, the Browns maybe didn't want fans chanting for Flacco when Deshaun Watson's struggling. They didn't want to have to deal with that. So the easy thing was, all right, thank you for that miracle run. We appreciate it. And he ended up going elsewhere. Colts made a wise decision bringing him in. Because if he has to play this week, and we'll see what happens with that game against Jacksonville. Because they might be without Jonathan Taylor now. But, yeah, it really does make you wonder. But then again, never should have let go of Baker Mayfield. Never should have let him go. Shouldn't have done it. But that's what they decided to do. So, yeah, Browns continue to struggle. They dropped to 1-3 on the season, and I forgot to put up the scoring graphic. But yeah, they dropped to 1-3 on the season. Raiders improved to 2-2. And when it comes to the Raiders, we'll see if they end up trading Devontae Adams. We'll see if that ends up happening. But, I mean, probably will happen, but who's it going to be that ends up getting him? And also Amari Cooper for the Browns. Is he going to end up getting traded? We'll have to wait and see. But at least some positive news on the Browns front with Nick Chubb coming back. But Browns got to start winning some football games. So in the next opportunity is against the Commanders, which they're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. So that is going to be a tough game for the Browns and their defense. They're going to have their hands full. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Jaguars now. They lost a tough game to the Houston Texans, a division rival. We'll get into that, what happened. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we will now get into talking about the Jaguars-Texans game. Jaguars losing a tough game here, 24-20. And we also have Anthony Manzano in the chat, a show regular. He says, what's your opinions on that interview that Deion Sanders did with Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson on their podcast, saying that the only team he would want his son to be drafted by was the Dolphins? I did not actually get a chance to see that, so I'll have to. Well, I saw other clips from that interview, but it had nothing to do with football. It had to do with something else. But, and he also said, and does Deion really have the amount of power to control where his son lands in the draft? Well, I mean, look at what happened with Eli Manning when he was drafted, by the Chargers. They didn't want him getting drafted by them, and they ended up doing a swap with him and Phillip Rivers. It was Archie Manning did not want Eli to get drafted by the Chargers either. And well, I don't really know if it was really Eli per se. I think it was more of his dad, but yeah, they kind of forced Eli out of being the Chargers quarterback, and they did that swap with the Giants to get Eli, and Phillip Rivers ended up going to the Chargers. So I mean, Deion's probably got some power there. And the other thing, too, is, I mean, we still got to see if the Dolphins are going to, what the Dolphins are going to end up doing. Because Tua's probably coming back. And we did have this discussion in our production meeting, and I'll probably hold off on this until next week. But if you're the Dolphins and you have a top 3 pick. Are you taking a quarterback there, even with Tua, after just paying him? So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I do think Dion has some power, but we'll see. Anyways, let's get to this game now. So the Jaguars and the Texans. The Jaguars, right now, they are the only winless team in the NFL. And I don't think many people would have thought that would be the case up until this point. I think there were some other teams that you could probably point to and say, yeah, that team would be winless at this point. But they are the only winless team in the NFL, and I made sure to double check. And they are. And they actually did play probably their best game of the season. Even though, some of the stats in this game may not tell you that. Like, Trevor Lawrence only threw for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. He went 18 of 33. But the Jags did run the football well. Tank Bigsby had 90 yards on the ground. Travis Etienne, 50 yards on the ground. The Jaguars in total ran the ball for 158 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. looks like a really good player for this team. Rookie wide receiver out of LSU. 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. Christian Kirk had 7 for 61 and a touchdown. Jaguars defense, only 2 sacks in this game. One by Roy Robertson Harris and the other by Jeremiah Ledbetter. None from Armstead, none from the other Josh Hines Allen. Yeah, I mean, they've just been very disappointing. But let's kind of go through it. So the Jaguars, they punted on their first possession. However, Steven Sims, I believe this is like his second muffed punt of the year. Because he muffed it before. So he muffed it. I believe he muffed it in another game. I could be wrong, though. Maybe it was just this game. But anyways, so he muffs the punt. Jaguars turn that into a touchdown immediately. Lawrence connects with Brian Thomas Jr. for a touchdown. And that was great. I was like, okay, Jags got off to a good start. But then the Texans, they answered right away, going 9 plays, 70 yards down the field. Stephon Diggs, it looked like he was going to try to throw it, but he ended up taking it in for a 6-yard touchdown, and that tied the game. However, the Jaguars did respond. Cam Little, their rookie kicker, 41-yard field goal to make it 10-7. Both teams punted. Then in the second quarter, Texans took the ball down the field. Almost 7.5 minutes of time of possession. And that resulted in a C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins 3-yard touchdown pass to make it 14-10. Jaguars kicked another field goal to make it 14-13. Cam Little from 52 yards out. And then the Jaguars, they kicked a field goal of their own. This was a Kaimi Fairbairn 30-yard field goal. So it was 17-13 at the half. So the Jaguars still in striking distance of this game. Then to open up the second half, both teams exchanged punts. Then the Jaguars, they took the ball, went 7 plays, 74 yards, 4 minutes of time of possession. 32-yard pass play by Trevor Lawrence connecting with Brian Thomas Jr. And then later in that drive from the Houston 8, Trevor Lawrence connects with Christian Kirk for an 8-yard touchdown to make it 20-17. But the Jaguars, they were not able to put the Texans away in this game. So they turned it over on downs. It was 4th and goal at the Houston 1-yard line. And Trevor Lawrence was not able to score. They stuffed him. And, I mean, I get it. I get the aggressiveness, but, maybe you go for the points there. I mean, they were up, they were up 20-17. You can make it, a touchdown game. I mean, I know the Texans, if they score a touchdown, which they ultimately did, they'd be up by a point, but I don't know. I feel like maybe you take the points there. But I could be wrong. That's an argument that you could, make the argument for both sides. But I don't know. The way things have been going for the Jaguars, put yourself up by a touchdown. But you know what? The defense, doing a good job. I mean, the Texans were punting, and then it was really that last possession of the game, and there was 18 seconds left. The Texans went 9 plays, 69 yards, 2.5 minutes of time of possession down the field. And Stroud connected with Dare Ungabuwale, one of the running backs. I mean, they're already down Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. He scored a touchdown on 2nd and goal from 1 yard out. And the Texans ultimately ended up winning. Tough loss for the Jaguars. I mean, again, this was probably the best game that they've played so far this year. And, they still ended up losing. Texans improved to 3-1. C.J. Stroud went 27-40, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Texans ran the ball for 101 yards. Cam Akers, 53 yards on the ground. We'll see if they end up getting Joe Mixon back this week. That would be huge for this team. Nico Collins has gotten off to a great start. On the year, he has 30 receptions for 489 yards and 2 touchdowns. In this game, he was targeted 15 times, 12 receptions for 151 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 9 targets, 5 receptions for 69 yards. Ungabuwale had 4 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz had 3 for 34. Steven Sims, a fumble in this game, and that they're fortunate that they won that game because that could have made a big difference. Texans defense only had 1 sack in the game, so the Jaguars at least were able to somewhat protect Trevor Lawrence in this game because that's been a problem so far this year. But didn't really matter. They still ended up losing. And you kind of look back at these games. I mean, other than the Bills game, the other 3 games were winnable. Like, you were up against the Dolphins by multiple scores. You probably should have won that game. The Browns, you only lost by 5 points. That was at home. Could have won that game. And then you had the opportunity to win in Houston, and they couldn't do that. So they fall to 0-4, and they got the Colts next. Then they're visiting the Bears. They're home against the Patriots, home against the Packers, at the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. I have a feeling that game could be flexed out if the Jaguars only have like 2 wins at that point, if they can even get a win. The Vikings at home, at the Lions. Yeah, they got some tough games on that schedule. That stretch between the Packers and the Lions from week 8 to week 11, that could really bury them. The Colts, I think, is a winnable game. And it's at home. Let's see what happens. But, yeah, it's not looking good right now. Not looking good right now for the Jags. It just continues this season continues to spiral out of control for them. And again, they didn't play a bad game. It's just it didn't amount to a win. So, and then for the Texans, I'll be honest, like, I was very high on the Texans going into this year, and this team is still very good. But to be honest, I mean, I got to be honest here. They really haven't been overly impressive. They beat week 1, they beat the Colts, and the Colts are kind of an inconsistent team. Then week 2, you beat the Bears, but you only beat them by 6 points. I mean, if Cam Akers doesn't fumble at the 1, they win by multiple scores, but that game should not have been that close. Although the Bears do have a good defense. I got to give them credit. They have a very good defense. And Caleb Williams, that was his second career game. But I think the Texans should have won by more than 6 points. They got shellacked by the Vikings. And then you beat the Jaguars. And, it took till, it got down to less than a minute in the game for you to take the lead and ultimately win. A team that's been playing bad. So I haven't really been that impressed with them so far. I was impressed with their week 1 victory, but then after some of these games, I'm like, some of these teams. I mean, the Bears, they should have won by multiple scores, like I said, but the Vikings was like a true test, and they got blown out. And when they go up against some of these teams, like the Bills on Sunday, that's really going to show me what this team is made of. And I think they'll play well. I think this is going to be one of the best games of the weekend, and that's going to be one of the games I preview tomorrow. That's a true test. But when you go up against them, when you go up against the Ravens and the Chiefs later in the year, that's really going to show me what you're made of. So, and obviously they don't have the full complement of weapons. Joe Mixon is still out. Hopefully he's back this week, but already he didn't practice, so odds are maybe he's leaning toward where it's trending towards him not playing, which would be a big loss. But yeah, they haven't been overly impressive, but they're 3-1. They're a good team, and right now they are in the driver's seat to win this division. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game, or some of your takeaways from it. Jaguars, they are just hoping that they can get in that win column at some point. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Bears and their 24-18 victory over the Rams, and that is what we'll finish up, how we will finish up the show for today. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Rams-Bears game, the last game that I will recap from Week 4. And let's kind of get into it. So the Bears, they ended up getting the win. They improved to 2-2 on the season. The Rams, they dropped to 1-3. Caleb Williams, after throwing, for a career best so far, 357 passing yards, I think is what it was. 363 passing yards. Only had 157 passing yards in the game. However, the Bears did run the football well in this game. DeAndre Swift had a good game. They had a couple of rushing touchdowns between him and Roschon Johnson, so that's encouraging. But, again, this offense is still trying to find itself. But they're 2-2. So, it's better than being 0-4 like the Jags, and the season's already looking like it'd be over. But the Bears are 2-2. So this is how the game started off. So you had a punt to start off the game by the Bears. Rams on their first drive went 13 plays, 68 yards. And Cardi from 46 yards out kicked a field goal to make it 3-0. Then the Bears punted once again. And the Rams, with the help of some penalties, went down the field. Stafford got picked off, but that ended up getting reversed, and it was a incompletion, and that led to Cardi kicking another field goal to make it 6-0. Then Bears punted, Rams did fumble, Stafford ended up getting sacked, lost the ball, and the Bears cashed in. They scored a touchdown, and it was a Roschon Johnson 1-yard touchdown to make it 7-6. However, Cardi missed a field goal, and this was from 43 yards out. And then for the Bears, on their drive, they scored they got a field goal. Cairo Santos from 40 yards out was set up by a 27-yard pass play from Caleb Williams to DeAndre Swift. Got hit on the play, but he was able to dump it off to Swift, and he took it for, like I said, for 27 yards. The Bears were up 10-6 at the half. Rams then opened it up with the field goal drive. Cardi from 25 yards out. So that made it 10-9 Rams, or 10-9 Bears. Then the Bears, 12 plays, 74 yards, 6 minutes, 13 seconds of time of possession down the field. And Caleb Williams, this was a nice play. Hits DJ Moore in the back of the end zone for a 9-yard touchdown on 3rd and 5. So that made it 17-9. And then the Rams did respond. Stafford connected with Tutu Atwell for 25 yards. Kyron Williams had a 14-yard run. And then Kyron Williams from 3 yards out scores to make it 17-15. The Rams did not cash in on the 2-point conversion. Then on the Bears' next drive, DeAndre Swift, a 36-yard rushing touchdown to make it 24-15. The Rams did kick a field goal on their next drive to answer. Cardi from 52 yards out to make it 24-18, but that ended up being it. Stafford ended up throwing a pick at the end to Brisker, and that's all she wrote. Matthew Stafford went 20-29 for 224 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Kyron Williams, 19 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. At least the Rams still have him, with all the guys out. Tutu Atwell had 4 for 82. Jordan Whittington had 6 for 62. Demarcus Robinson, 2 for 37. Stafford also had a fumble loss in this game. 3 sacks by the Rams defense. And then, like I said, I went over Caleb Williams' stats. DeAndre Swift had a good game. Was also the Bears' leading receiver as well, 72 yards receiving. Cole Kmet, 34 yards receiving. DJ Moore, 22 yards. Keenan Allen, 19, and Rome Odunze, 10. So, yeah, like I said, the Bears' offense, they're still looking to find it. But, one of the things is the offensive line. The offensive line, has been an issue. However, the fact that the Bears were able to run the ball effectively, that's encouraging because that's something that they really have failed to do. And Roschon Johnson, he was going to get more opportunities this week. And I guess DeAndre Swift, didn't like that. And, look at what he was able to do. If this Bears offense gets it going, this offense can be really good. You want to see Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze had a good game last week. DJ Moore looks like, him and Caleb Williams are slowly working towards building that rapport. Keenan Allen's kind of missed the last couple games, so obviously, they're going to get him going at some point. But this Bears team has a lot of talent, and if they could get it going here, they could definitely make it as a wild card. But, you'd like to see Caleb Williams, put up better numbers. Last week, again, had a ton of passing yards, but had a couple of interceptions. This week, again, not a ton of yards, but you know what? They got the win. It was good enough to get the win. They ran the football. So the Bears are going to have to try, I guess, every week it's something different, Week 1, it was their defense and their special teams. And then this game was their running game. So... if a couple of plays go their way, again, like if DJ Moore ends up scoring that touchdown on the Hail Mary instead of getting tackled at the 1, Bears are 3-1 right now. And again, they only lost to the Texans by 6 points. So the Bears are the 2 losses that the Bears have, they were in both of those games. So, this is a good team. It's just offensively, they're still trying to figure it out. And I said it before the year started. That's what's going to happen. But this is a team that, in the second half, they can get hot and, maybe they can make a run because of the talent that they got. So, and then for the Rams, you just kind of feel bad with what's going on with them with, all the injuries that they're suffering right now. They had that big win against the 49ers, but now they kind of, are back in the same spot. Losing this game, and they had a chance to win. They definitely had a chance to win, but and it's a lot of obviously Stafford hit a couple of had a couple of big plays in this game, but a lot of it's getting the ball out quickly because you're so banged up on the offensive line. There's no Cooper Kupp, there's no Puka Nacua. It's just they're kind of limited at what they can do right now. So they take on the Packers this week. That's going to be a tough game. And then for the Bears, they take on the Panthers at home. So the Bears could maybe, get that win and go, and they're 3-2. So, but yeah, the Rams, they got to get healthy. And maybe, if they could somehow pull off an upset, you're 2-3 going to the bye, you at least get Cooper Kupp back hopefully after the bye, because maybe that's what the Rams are, maybe that's what's going to end up happening. I don't know. We'll have to see. Because they didn't put Cooper Kupp on IR. You at least get him back. That helps. And then, hopefully, they get healthier on the offensive line. And you get Puka Nacua back, who's going to miss at least another month. So, and maybe the Rams are a team that makes a run in the second half like they did last year. So, we'll see. But, yeah, with the Bears, look, both wins that they have were not great. But you know what? They're wins, and you'll take it. You're 2-2, and hopefully this offense hits its stride at some point. Because when it does, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So, got the game tonight, of course, between the Falcons and the Buccaneers. That gets us started in Week 5. I mean, we're already... First month of the season went by like that. I mean, it's just... football is going to come and go, so we just got to enjoy it while it lasts. But it's already, moving really fast. But anyways, yeah, so we got that game tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to preview some of the big matchups, because there's quite a few. We got the Bills and the Texans. That's a big game. The Sunday night game between the Cowboys and the Steelers, that's huge, just because of the history between the two teams. Obviously tomorrow we'll recap, tonight's game. And then there was also another game that the Jets and the Vikings, I think is an interesting game as well that, I might want to cover. And then I guess, in the final part of the show, if I end up doing that, it's just going to be me going through the big college football matchups as well as, the rest of the games in the NFL. So that's kind of my plan. I think tomorrow is preview the big matchups in the NFL, and then, well, obviously recap the game from tonight tomorrow, and then preview the rest of the games between college football and the NFL. So, yeah, no, it's another jam-packed weekend. Again, we got a game tonight. Also, baseball playoffs are underway. The wild card series is almost over. There's one more series that has to be determined, and that is between the Mets and the Brewers. So I'll be locked into that because the other games, the other series ended in sweeps. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. And then, the NBA is going to be starting soon. NHL preseason is underway. So, before we know it, we're going to get to that the day of the sports equinox when all four sports are being played at the same time. So, regular season. But yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. And then soon after that, college basketball is gonna start. So yeah, a lot of things coming up within the next month. So, but yeah, enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully it's better than last Thursday. I think it will. I'm hoping that my fantasy teams do well this week because I went 0-5 in my leagues. Not great. So hopefully this week is a bounce back week for me. But I'm not very optimistic. But we'll see. So yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I apologize for the network issues early on. I don't know what happened. The Wi-Fi just disconnected. So, but it is what it is. Hopefully that doesn't happen tomorrow. But yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love, like I always say. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. Also, this episode and all of our episodes, all of our shows, they're also on wherever you get your podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get them. So, if you want to listen to the show, make sure to go check them out. But yeah, so with that is all the time that we have for today. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, enjoy the game tonight, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to